And here's what, again, because this whole point of this motu proprio of Francis is to follow Vatican II and the decrees of Vatican II and to the liturgical reform of Vatican II. Well, let's see what actually somebody who participated in Vatican II, one of the prime periti experts of Vatican II at Vatican II, who had one of the most influential positions in Vatican II, was Father Joseph Ratzinger, with Karl Rahner and others. A real Vatican II man. What does he say about Vatican II? This is Cardinal Ratzinger's 1988 address to the Chilean bishops. Of course, he tries to... I'm going to just take... Not everything in it I agree with, like especially when he talks about Archbishop Lefebvre, which he's vindicated. Archbishop Lefebvre has basically said exactly what Ratzinger is saying. But of course, again, as head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, of course, he has to maintain kind of a bit of a distance. So, again, this is an important part because you're going to hear what one of the main movers and shakers of Vatican II, who manipulated the council with others, Ratzinger, Joseph Ratzinger, has to say about Vatican II. And now he is the head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith under Saint John Paul II. What does he say? Let's see. 1988, Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. I'm not going through it. I'm just going to quote a few things. He just talks about, look, these people say, oh, you're so nice to traditionalists. But the people who want more severe actions against the traditional Catholics are the ones who deny Catholic doctrine, and nothing is done for them, to them. That's what Ratzinger is saying. It is these people who have let no occasion slip to allow the world to know their disobedience to the Pope and to the magisterial documents of the last 20 years, who wish that an absolute obedience to the Vatican II has to be insisted upon. That is the same people running the church now. The same people. They disobey every doctrine. Even Vatican II has a ton of goods. Even Vatican II itself, I have a video, the one true church is the Catholic Church, or Vatican II says the church is the Catholic Church. Church of Christ is the Catholic Church. So Vatican II and the like the documents came after it. They reject all that. They reject a lot of Catholic teachings, but again, obey Vatican II. What do you mean by Vatican II? Oh, well, the spirit of Vatican II. Well, ignore the documents, ignore the letters, ignore the actual statements. Let's go with the spirit. And the spirit can contradict the letter. But that's what they want. So these are the people who, obey Vatican II while we ignore magisterial teachings and disobedience to the Pope. But, other than that, obey Vatican II. And you got to get these traditionals to obey, to accept Vatican II, whatever that means. And the traditionals actually accept Vatican II way more than these innovators. But in reality, the only point which is affirmed, okay, now he's talking about the agreement between Archbishop Lefebvre and Ratzinger. In reality, the only point which is affirmed in the agreement following, I have to do that because I've got my camera in front of me here. Following Lumen Gentium number 25 is the plain fact. It's the plain fact that not all the documents of the council have the same authority. Some have more, some have less. It's not like the Word of God. It's not divinely inspired by the Holy Spirit, as they attempt to tell us. Every deform after the council was inspired by the Spirit. Well, which Spirit are we talking about? Definitely not the Holy Spirit. While there are many motives that might have led the great number of people to seek refuge in the traditional liturgy, he says there's many motives, above all, doctrinal. Chief one is that they find the dignity of the sacred preserved there, which means they do not find the dignity of the sacred preserved in the fabricated novelty of Paul VI. That's exactly what it means. Of course, I'm just not going through the article, but you can find it yourself online and read the whole thing if you like. Okay, now this explains what the Francis of Rome, his ilk, his junta, and a great preponderance of world bishops and theologians believe. Certainly, there is a mentality of narrow views that isolate Vatican II, and which has provoked this opposition because they take it by itself. Ignore all the ecumenical councils, all the papal teaching, all the ordinary magisterium of the last 2,000 years, but let's just take Vatican II, even though it taught no doctrine. That isolates Vatican II, and which has provoked this opposition. There are many accounts of it which give the impression, now there's lots of accounts which give the impression of what? From Vatican II onwards, everything has been changed, and that what preceded it, pre-conciliar, has no value, and at best has value only in the light of Vatican II, instead of Vatican II being understood in the light of all of tradition. So, I don't understand this part of Vatican II. It seems vague. It seems wrong. Well, let's see what the church taught for 2,000 years, and then we can try to rightly understand that part, which is basically the hermeneutics of continuity of Benedict XVI. But these people, which are ruling now, they take Vatican II as everything changed at Vatican II. Okay. Everything that before Vatican II means nothing. We ignore it. Vatican II, we start from here and then do whatever we want, innovate. That's not Christianity. That is basically Protestantism. The second, now this is very, very important. The Second Vatican Council. This is Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, future Pope Benedict XVI. What does he say? The Second Vatican, prime mover and shaker at Vatican II, one of the main periti experts at Vatican II, participated at the council. So what does he say? The Second Vatican Council has not been treated as part of the entire living tradition of the church, but as the end of tradition, a new start from zero. The truth is, so this is how they treat it. Everything before Vatican II means nothing, means zero. Vatican II is start from zero. It is the new Pentecost. It's the new springtime. The truth is, for those who have ears to hear, for eyes to see, the truth is that this particular council, in contrast with every other council, the truth is that this Vatican II, particular council, Vatican II, defined no dogma at all. Defined no dogma at all. Nothing in Vatican II will affect what the church taught for 2,000 years. Because it defined no dogma at all. Defined no doctrine at all. And deliberately chose to remain on a modest level as a merely pastoral council. This is not some traditionalist saying that. Head of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith under John Paul II, participated at Vatican II, one of the prime movers and shakers at Vatican II, who had humongous influence at Vatican II. What does he say? People treat it as a start from zero. as a super dogma, he will say it, or did I quote it already? No, he'll say. But in fact, the truth is of the matter, at this particular council, Vatican II, do you obey Vatican? Do you believe? Do you adhere to Vatican II? Yeah, sure, whatever. Do you accept Vatican II? Yeah, whatever. Sure, I accept Vatican II. I accept it. So when they asked the tradition, do you accept Vatican II? Sure, I accept Vatican II. Well, it was convoked by a pope and bishops were there, so it's a valid council. But do you accept Vatican II? Yeah, sure. According to the understanding of each rank of each document, as Ratzinger says. Do you accept Vatican II? Sure, I accept it 100%, exactly like Ratzinger says, of the truth of this council, which is, at this particular council, Vatican II, which I accept fine, define no dogma at all. So basically it doesn't affect my faith. And deliberately chose to remain on a modest level as a merely pastoral council. It is the lowest of the low. It is the least of all councils of the Catholic Church. Merely pastoral council. And pastoral things can change. Well, we thought we should do that. No, pastoral, maybe you should do that now. Yeah, okay. And yet, so this merely pastoral council with defined no dogma or doctrine. So it's the least of all councils. Yet, many treated, including Francis of Rome and his ilk, they treat it as though it had made itself a sort of super dogma, when it defined nothing, which takes away the importance of all the rest. So, you accept Vatican II? Sure. Define nothing. Deliberately remained at a modest level as a merely pastoral council. Sure, I accept that. 100%, fine. Pastoral ideas of Vatican II could be changed because they define nothing. This idea is made stronger by things that are now happening. That which, again, this is what he said in 2007, freeing the ancient liturgy. That what is now happening, that which previously was considered most holy. What is that? The form in which the liturgy was handed down, not invented and fabricated, suddenly appears to be the most forbidden of all things. The one thing that can safely be prohibited. That's it. But allow every form of depravity and innovation and novelty. It's great and fantastic. The only thing which is safe to be prohibited is the thing which was considered the most holy, the divine liturgy, as handed down through apostolic tradition. That's the only thing you can safely forbid, and is dangerous. It is intolerable to criticize decisions which have been taken since the council, even though it was just merely pastoral. On the other hand, if men make question of ancient rules or even of great truths of the faith, for instance, the corporal virginity of Mary, the bodily resurrection of Jesus, the immortality of the soul, etc., nobody complains, or only does so with greatest moderation. I'll finish this quote. Well, you can read it. I'm not going to read the rest. So the only way in which to make Vatican II can be made plausible. The only way in which Vatican II can be made plausible, otherwise it's not plausible, it's a garbage bin of a council, is to present it as part of the unbroken, unique tradition of the Church and her faith. And that's what he attempted to do under the term of hermeneutics of continuity. Because the only way to make Vatican II plausible is to say, look, it's only a part, and actually a small part, a merely pastoral council of the entire history of the Church. That's the only way to make it plausible. If you say, no, Vatican II, ignore everything else, then it's not plausible. It is the least of the least. It is nothing. It could be totally 100% ignored. In the spiritual movements of the post-conciliar era, there is not the slightest doubt that frequently there has been obliviousness or even a suppression of the issue of truth. Truth has no meaning these days. It's like, oh, what is truth? I don't know. Does it feel right? When one says something is true, it's true. Anyways. The truth is thought to be a claim to that. The truth is thought to be a claim that is too exalted, a triumphalism that cannot be permitted any longer. And that's why, for the last great while, truth has been, what is truth? Oh, yeah, now there's a evolution of dogma. We ignore the meaning of dogma and teaching of the last 2,000 years. Now we understand that this way. Our new Eucharistic understanding is that. Our new understanding of the church is this. Ignore truth. Truth is too. There's no such thing as truth. You're being triumphalistic. Well, yeah, we want to be triumphalistic because Christ is truth and he triumphs. It is, if we do not point, and this is absolutely true, and you should watch my video on Pope Francis, evangelization versus proselytism, because in it he basically abolishes truth, and he tells people, live nicely and don't proclaim the truth, don't debate, don't try to convince people to convert to the faith, don't debate ideas. That's proselytism. If you do not point to the truth in announcing our faith, and if this truth is no longer essential for the salvation of man, then the missions lose their meaning. The missions meaning, all the orders going to supposedly preach the gospel and convert people to the Christian faith, the true Christian faith, which is the Catholic faith. But if there is no truth, then they lose their mission. And that's why you saw the basically destruction of the missionary zeal. And what he condemns here is what is being promoted now. Christians should be good Christians. Muslims, good Muslims. Hindus, good Hindus. Yay! That's why they have the Abrahamic whatever this construction in Dubai or one of these Arabian countries of the Vatican, partnering up with Islamic countries. They're building in one site 3 temples, one for the Christian religion, one for the Jewish religion, and one for the Islamic religion, the Abrahamic religions. Oh, Christians can be good Christians, Muslims good Muslims, Jews good Jews, Hindus good Hindus. No truth. It doesn't matter. The idea that all religions are, if you talk seriously, only symbols of what ultimately is incomprehensible, is rapidly gaining ground in theology. And that's in 1988. So what is the situation now? And has already penetrated into liturgical practices. This is the paganization of the liturgy. It is inculturation. When things get to this point, faith is left behind. Faith is left behind because faith really consists in the fact that I am committing myself to the truth. So this is Cardinal Ratzinger's address in 1988 to the Chilean bishops about Vatican II. You have to understand the documents according to their level of authority. And the whole council, top to bottom, first letter to last letter, alpha to omega, confined itself on a modest level as a merely pastoral council. define no dogma or doctrine. That is when they hear, except Vatican II, it is against Vatican II. Well, define nothing. Okay, sure, I'll accept whatever you said. And to show you that indeed Vatican II, even Cardinal Ratzinger, in his writings, he talks about it in his book, The Principles of Catholic Theology. He talks about the document Gaudium et Spes as a counter-syllabus. And that is the syllabus of modern errors of Pius XI. And he says here, let us content ourselves here with stating that the text of Gaudium et Spes always plays the role of a counter-syllabus to the measure that it represents an attempt to officially reconcile the Church with the modern world as it had become in 1789 after the French Revolution, the anti-Christian French Revolution. So the Church is attempting to reconcile itself with the I'm going to start closing tabs so I don't have a million things, but hopefully you remember what I said. With the anti-Christian French Revolution, Cardinal Ratzinger himself calls the document Gaudium et Spes a counter-syllabus of Pius XI. And that's a syllabus of errors. You should go over it. And like certain things might seem to us, oh, that's kind of weird. But you should just read it. Of course, it is errors, which meaning they are errors. They cannot be reconciled. Even like talking about, okay, yeah, you can't talk about Christianity being the only true religion. Whatever is. A man may, in the observance of any religion, whatever, find the way to eternal salvation and arrive at eternal salvation. That's one of the errors. So it's a whole bunch of errors. You can just go find something. The Roman pontiffs and ecumenical councils have wandered outside of their powers. They have usurped the rights of princes, so the governments, and have even erred in defining matters of faith and morals. That's another error. So we're having a counter-syllabus to this, because you will see Cardinal Dulles says, oh yeah, they screwed up in the past. Now we are rearranging, refixing things. So anyways, I'll let you go over it. I'm not going to go, it's not the point of it, but that's the syllabus of errors. If you know, what is he talking about, the counter-syllabus? What is he talking about? That's what he's talking about. So you can go over it yourself. Now, Avery Dulles, he was a participant in Vatican II, cardinal, modernist, progressive, Catholic, professor. Anyways, and this is what he said in his presidential address. I can't remember the exact date for it. But anyways, this is you can find that presidential address of Avery Dulles. And he talks about Vatican II here. Ignore that part. All right, let me just kind of move. Most important, I don't know if you can't even highlight. It's basically this section here. Most important for our purposes, Vatican II quietly reversed earlier positions of the Roman magisterium on a number of important issues. So you reverse the teaching of the ordinary and thus infallible magisterium of the Church. For example, are well known in the biblical studies. For instance, where is it? In the biblical studies, for instance, the Constitution of Divine Revelation accepted the critical method to approach the New Testament, which is basically textual criticism, which basically denies divine revelation, which is false, because actually Vatican II itself talks about the scriptures being divinely revealed by the Holy Spirit and having God as the author, and so he's lying. But that's the impression, the spirit of Vatican II, that it destroyed the faith. But he's an expert, he's a cardinal, he must be telling the truth. But when you read the documents, you find he's a liar. But in other things, he's telling the truth. Biblical Commission. Again, it talks about the counter-syllabus here of Pius XI's Mortalium Animus, and about the errors of the modern and religious freedom. What do you mean by religious freedom? I mean, error has no rights. I am not. God does not give me the right to worship the devil. God does not give me the right to sacrifice babies to demons. That is not my religious freedom. God doesn't give me the right to worship angels than the Creator. That's not a human right. So this is why you have to understand what you mean by the Church's freedom of religion. And then, as a result, as a result of these and other previously official positions, the Council rehabilitated theologians who has suffered the severe restrictions. So people who were deemed heretical were rehabilitated because now their false teaching has been accepted. Anyways, so Cardinal Avery Dulles basically supports what Cardinal Ratzinger has just said of the counter-syllabus, and what basically same thing is said by was told by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, not by him. He was an expert at the council. He was one of the bishops at the council, and he reports it in his book Open Letter to Confused Catholics. It was Cardinal Suenens, one of the progressives at the council, who explained Vatican II is the French Revolution in the Church. And remember what Ratzinger said? That the Gaudium et Spes was a counter-syllabus, and it tried to reconcile the Church to the world, which happened after the French Revolution. So Vatican II was the French Revolution in the Church. And among other unguarded declarations, he added, one cannot understand the French and Russian revolutions unless one knows something of old regimes, which they brought to an end. It is the same in the church affairs. A reaction can only be judged by the relation of the thing that preceded it. And why are you asking me, am I dwelling on this Vatican II for so long before going to the motu proprio, well, to the theme of this video, which is they hate the Latin Mass, the traditional Roman Rite, because they hate the Catholic faith. Because they will tell you the ancient liturgy is against Vatican II. Well, and against the reforms which emanated from the council. Well, if we understand the council then, and what it represents, then we can respond to these people. If you don't know what they understand what it represents, and the authority of the merely pastoral, modest Council of Vatican II, as compared to everything else, you will not be able to respond to these people. Okay. Vatican II marked the end of an epoch. He continued, Cardinal Suenens says, the Second Vatican Council marked the end of an epoch, and if we stand back from it a little more, we see it marked the end of a series of epochs, the end of an age. Pierre Congar, one of the artisans of the Deform, spoke likewise. The Church has had peacefully its October Revolution. What is the October Revolution? October 1917, the Communist Revolution in Russia. In 1976, Father Jeleno, one of the liturgical experts, he had this to say: the reform decided on by Vatican II. It wasn't really, again, the Vatican II says restore to the certain things of the Roman rite, pure, it didn't say give us a brand new liturgy, destroy the ancient rite. No, it's just edit it, make certain things more simplified. And actually, when you read it and you read what John the 23rd was talking about, there's identical verbiage when he talks about simplification of rites. He is talking about the simplification of the rubrics, not necessarily the prayers and so forth. The Sacrament was the signal for the fall. The entire structures have come crashing down. Make no mistake about it. The translation is not just to say the same thing in other words. It is a change in form. And actually, as I said, the new liturgical rites of all 7 sacraments are not simple translations. If they were simple translations, there would be still a desire for the ancient language because of the ancient heritage and the universality and the Gregorian chant which goes with it. But it would not be, the opposition would not be as bad because it is maintaining the same faith, the same liturgy, the same words, the same prayers. But it is not about Latin. It is about the entire rite which has been altered. If the form changes, and it has been changed, it has been demolished, the rite changes. Paul VI will call his fabrication the new rite. If one element is changed, the totality is altered. And it's just not one element. The whole thing was altered. One must be said, must be said without mincing words. The Roman rite, as we used to know it, exists no more. The Roman rite has been destroyed. And Ratzinger himself will echo the same thing. So this is, again, you see it. Ratzinger, Dulles, Cardinal Suenens, Yves Congar, Gelano, Marcel Lefebvre, all saying the same thing.